But today, I am really happy to join you and talk to you about feedback. One thing I know as a executive coach is that feedback comes up really regularly in sessions with regards to your team members that are seeing some challenges from leaders. Sometimes, the um, positive feedback, that's easy. We can do that all day long. But very often, whether you're a seasoned or a new people manager, the constructive and the corrective feedback is always tough, and it has to do with relationships that we have, the other person's personalities, who's going to be receiving the feedback, all that stuff. So that's why I want to handle this one as the first topic, because everybody's going through, more than likely, performance evaluations right now, preparing those evaluations. But so it's pretty timely for right now. But feedback has to be done on a regular basis, and we'll jump into that. Now, the first thing I want to say is words matter. So I am a strengths-based coach. So when I am talking about feedback, it's either positive or it's corrective or constructive. It's never negative. I still know that a lot of people use the word negative, and I need everybody to take that word out of your vocabulary. It's not negative feedback. It is positive, or it is corrective or constructive feedback. Now, with that being said, let me share my screen. We're just going to have a real quick slide deck today. And if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat box as we go along the way. But we're only here until the top of the hour. So let's get started. Okay. So you should all see my screen right now. This is delivering positive feedback. And when it comes to feedback, there is one fundamental principle that I want leaders to understand. Sometimes as leaders, we can kind of gloss over things that may not be that big a deal, or we think it's not that big of a deal at the moment or in the moment. But as they kind of progress, they tend to get worse over time, and then it's more difficult to have those conversations. So the first basic principle that I have with regards to providing feedback is what is unsaid is unknown and unfixable. So that is really a reminder and kind of your internal push to say, I need to have this feedback. I know it's not going to be comfortable. It never is. But if I don't have a feedback conversation now, then it's going to cause more problems in the future. So what is unsaid is unknown and unfixable. So think about that when you are faced with anything that you have to deal with as you manage your teams. Secondly, we're going to talk about there's a what I call a triad when it comes to delivering feedback. Okay, with feedback, what I hear from your team members and people that I have in sessions in the executive coaching, I hear, number one, that feedback is kind of one off. I may get the feedback in our quarterly check-ins, or I may get the feedback at the end of the year for the performance evaluation process, but it's never consistent. Now, it's really important that feedback that you provide for your teams are timely and consistent. So what do I mean by timely? What I mean by timely is in the moment, okay? It really, the value of you going back and saying to your team member, hey, remember 2 months ago when you did that? That was amazing. That was awesome. It's too late. What you have to do is do it in the moment. Get that positive stuff, that positive feedback, affirmations to your team in the moment. Take the time also to do the corrective feedback in the moment. Now, the other question, or the other issue with feedback is it has to be balanced between positive and corrective. In my personal career and in some of the sessions, I know that there are some of us out there that kind of favor the positive over the corrective. And there are a few people out there where it is more corrective and very little positive. If you don't hear from it, if you don't hear from me, then you're doing a good job, that type of thing. It's really important that your team members, your direct reports, get a nice balance between positive and corrective feedback. That's really important. The other thing is that you provide the why and what's in it for them whenever you give feedback, okay? Part of that is figuring out what their motivation is. So the why sometimes is because you're helping them get set up for promotion. Sometimes the why is, look, in terms of how you did this particular task, this is how it affects the team and other people, other stakeholders that are going to be utilizing your work, whether it's positively or needs additional work done before it is usable. So it's really important that you connect the dots, as I say, in terms of making sure they understand the why behind whatever the feedback is that you're giving them. That is really, really important, because the other thing I didn't put on this slide, but we all do 360 feedbacks. We go through all of that. The most impactful feedback you can give any one of your direct reports is firsthand feedback. It's much easier and much more impactful if Joe can say, hey, so-and-so, Susan on my team, I just observed this in our meeting, and I just want to debrief that with you. Let's talk about that exchange, because I'm concerned about how you may have come across in terms of collaboration, something like that. So that first person feedback here is a lot more weight than the, hey, I heard from so-and-so, tell me your story, what happened there. So that's the triad of feedback: timely and consistent, a nice balance between the positive and the corrective, and then making sure you're connecting that why and what's in it for them in terms of improving whatever it is you're talking about in that feedback. Next. So let's talk about how you compose the feedback. So you are getting together your notes to have this conversation about something that your team member needs to improve and work on. So the first thing is, be very clear about why you're giving them the feedback. So in your own mind, think about how you view them. Are they completely capable? Maybe they need some technical knowledge to set them up for the future. What's the why behind you giving the feedback? Are you trying to support them in being prepared for that next promotion cycle, or maybe that raise in compensation? So be very clear about why you're giving them this feedback. The other thing is, or the next thing I should say, is to stick to just the facts. So what you are dealing with is the behavior or the action. You're not dealing with any extraneous things. For example, hey, I really think that you kind of just sleepwalk that project through. It doesn't look like you put a lot of effort into it. No, that turns into then what is going to be processed on the receiving end as a personal attack. So what you want to do is stick to just the facts in terms of what happened and what were the consequences of what happened. And then the other thing is, if you're giving feedback and if you are looking to have improvements in behavior or performance, make sure that you're talking about something that they have control over. So for example, if they've had a history of a couple of projects that they missed the deadline on, let's talk about why they missed the deadline. Maybe you may uncover that it was another stakeholder from another team with cross-team collaboration that did not provide their work in time for your direct report to do what they had to do. So that might be an opportunity for you to figure out where the blockers are and help them. So the bottom line is, don't give them feedback to fix something that they can't control. That's the bottom line, because then that just leads to a lot of frustration. So when you're composing your feedback, make sure you keep these things in mind. The next thing is how you're going to deliver the feedback. So feedback, timing is everything. So when I talk about timing, my suggestion is don't have these types of conversations at the end of the day on Friday. That's not where everybody is in the zone where they're really paying attention. They're probably already thinking about the weekend. Don't schedule it, if you can, just prior to lunch, because people are probably thinking more so about going out to lunch or whatever it is. Their minds are somewhere else. Typically, the best time to do a meeting to deliver feedback is first thing in the morning before days get hectic, and sometime during that week, say Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because Mondays usually people are trying to figure out what they're doing that week, maybe scrambling with a couple of emails that came in over the weekend. Friday, people are basically cleaning everything off their desk so they can enjoy the weekend. So that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, sometime in the morning is generally best. But it depends on your situation and where your direct reports are with regards to time zones and whatnot. So the other thing is, or the next thing I should say, is I like to use a method called the view from the balcony. So once you prepare all your comments and what you want to talk about, then rehearse it. And the view from the balcony means that you as the manager are sitting in the audience, and then there's manager you and the direct report, your team members, on stage. And just rehearse what you're saying and how you're going to say it. This really helps you uncover any possible emotional triggers. So when you go through that process, you'll start identifying, you know what, I need to say that better, because that really, if I was receiving that, I probably wouldn't like the way I said that. I need to fix that and do that ahead of time. So the view from the balcony. When you deliver the feedback and they're processing it, here's the time where you need to really lean into what I call heard, understood, and understand. So your direct report, your team member, as they process this feedback, they're going to have opinions, they're going to have questions. So that is where you need to make the time for them to be heard. And so you empathetically hear what they have to say as they're processing this feedback. The next one is understood. They're going to have questions, they're going to have concerns. So make sure you hear their questions, their concerns about whatever it is you're bringing to them. And then help them, where you come in, is help them understand the implications, the why. Remember, I talked about the why behind this. So Simon Sinek always talks about the why. Be very clear on the why behind kind of the big picture. That understand is the big picture in terms of you're an important part of this team, and this is where I need you to be from a performance standpoint so that we work more effectively, whatever the talking point is. But that heard, understood, and understand are really, really critical when you are trying to get them to move forward and act on the feedback that you're giving them. Lastly, collaborating for growth. This one is really interesting, and it's something that I wish I knew way back when. But first, it's helping them identify actions that they can take to improve their performance. And I highlighted actions that they can take. Now, this is important. It's really easy for us to say, here's what I need you to go do. You need to fix this, so here, go do A, B, C, and D. What is much more impactful is if you can facilitate the conversation to help them figure out their action steps. If they agree with the feedback and they want to improve, what actions are they going to take? Now, the reason for that is it's getting them thinking about what they are able to do, number one. Number two, it helps them be accountable, because if they choose the actions and then you're following up to track progress and they're not doing it, it's not that I told you to do it. This is what you committed to doing. So let's talk about why you're not progressing in that area. So that's really important. Also, be supportive, be collaborative, be, if there's additional resources that are needed, it's important to have them in the right mental state to know that you're supporting them, that you see them as being totally capable of doing whatever the change is. But it's also important to track the progress. Far too often, these conversations happen once a quarter, once a year, and then we totally forget about tracking it and looking at it until that next cycle. And all of a sudden, you've wasted 3 months or 12 months, 11 months in terms of improving whatever it is you're trying to improve upon. So that's just a real quick hit, because I know we're at 12:01 right now. Hopefully you found some value in that as you are setting up for your performance evaluations and giving feedback on a regular basis. If you have any questions about anything we talked about today, reach out to me at coachjoe@coachjoepanito.com. Email is always the best. I will tell you full disclosure. I have so many different emails I track. LinkedIn messaging, LinkedIn emails are the last thing I look at. So don't try to connect with me on LinkedIn. Use the coachjoe@coachjoepanito.com email address, and hopefully you got some value out of this. If you have any questions, like I said, reach out to me, and have yourself a great rest of the week.